Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and guess what time of year it is? It is time to start thinking about the garden. It's February, it's been a long winter here in Northwest Ohio, and it is time for us to start thinking about the growing season because some of our seeds really need to get started here indoors in the month of February. And so I'm going to go through my garden planning process, and then we're going to start some of those seeds at the end of this video. So let's go ahead and jump in. Today I want to talk about my garden planning process, and let me just talk to you a little bit about my experience with gardening. I have had a home garden for the past 13 years, maybe a little more than 13-ish years in some form. We started very small at our old house. It was a suburban garden in a little backyard. And then we were in a transition period between moving from that house to moving to this homestead. And we lived for a year and a half in a condo. And even at that condo, I grew plants in pots on the back deck because I missed my garden so much. And I had pots of tomatoes and peppers and all sorts of herbs and even, flowers and things because I just have to get my hands in the soil and grow things. I love to garden. And then we have been here, this will be our 8th gardening season here at this homestead on this land. So I feel like I've sort of mastered the climate here and the pests that we deal with and all the other issues. If you're a new gardener, that's really challenging. It takes several years to learn, how the sunlight will shine down on your garden space and what the pest load is going to be like, what your soil is like. For the first 4 or 5 years at this particular house with this garden, we fought the soil. We have very heavy clay soil here in this part of Ohio, and we fought it. We tried tilling it, we tried doing no-till, and there is literally no drainage in the soil, and water would just pool. And we had several years where a complete garden got flooded out after a week of heavy rain, and it was just extremely frustrating. At one point, my garden, probably 3 years ago, was about 4,000 square feet. And at that time, it started to become unmanageable for me. I'm a very busy mom. I have had 3 babies since moving into this, or 4 babies now, since moving here to this property. And so I'm dealing with either pregnancy or nursing, and 4,000 square feet became too much to deal with. So approximately 2 years ago, I'm trying to think, it would have been 2021 would have been the first year we cut the garden space in half. So now I'm dealing with only 2,000 square feet, which is actually larger than our house. Our house is only 1,600 square feet. So the garden is still big, but to produce food for a family of 10, it isn't, really that huge. But it's what I can manage. And I've reached a point in my life where I would rather have a smaller garden that I can keep well managed versus a huge garden that is, going to end up just falling apart because by the end of the summer or by the middle of the summer, I just have to give up because life is too busy. So that is what we're working with here. Last year, I've switched to raised beds for half of the garden. I'm going to put some pictures up here of the garden beds that we used or chose. Lumber prices, when we were pricing out in the winter of 2021 to 2022, lumber prices were through the roof. So making wooden beds was just not something I was interested in doing. I found a really good deal on like a Black Friday sale or something with these metal beds from Amazon, and we purchased enough to handle half of the garden space, and it worked out wonderfully. I loved the raised beds. We put down landscape fabric underneath the garden beds and all around it. And then the other half of the garden I kept in ground. And what I noticed, because I was pregnant last year, is the areas that had the raised beds in the landscape garden were prolific. They were beautiful. They were so easy for me to maintain. The areas that were in ground, by the middle of the summer, the weeds kind of overtook them. And while we still harvested a little bit, we harvested less than we would have had I been able to keep up with the weeds. So this year the plan is to switch the other half of the garden now to raised beds. So the whole garden will be these raised beds, and I've kept my eye on those beds all through the last year, and whenever they have gone on sale, I have bought a couple and just kind of space that cost out through the year, and it's worked out to the point where I believe we have enough to fill the whole garden, which leads me to the first step of my garden planning process. So what I needed to do is make my plan, and this year that consisted of finding out where and how I can fit those existing or those new raised beds in the existing garden space. So what I did several years ago is I went out and I measured the entire garden and got the square footage of everything all around and I would plot it out on graph paper and maybe allocate one box to 1 square foot or 2 square feet, however I wanted to do it. And I would just put my little beds in and I would plot it out that way. Well, this year I discovered something way easier, and it is called Hortisketch, and it's by a company named Garden Savvy, and it's a very reasonable price. I'm going to put the link to it in the description, and I actually have a discount code. I believe you can get $5 off if you use my code right here. So anyways, Hortisketch, it is a digital version of what I was doing on graph paper, and I'm going to take a second here and explain to you how that works.
We're going to make a new garden here, and you can choose whether you want it to have landscape fabric or dirt or whatever as your background. I went ahead and just chose the grid so that I could kind of see what I'm working with. And then over here they have all sorts of structures that you can choose from to build your garden. I'm using metal raised beds, and thankfully they have little oval shaped bed shapes. And so I can put them to the exact size of my beds and just kind of put them there in the space. And then something else that's pretty handy is I can hit duplicate over here and it will just copy the exact shape that I had just made. So it makes it very easy if you have multiple beds in the same shape. Then I'm going to create some of my smaller beds that are kind of half this size. And once again, duplicate and just kind of put them in there and get this all set up. So like I said, they have all sorts of structures over here. You can make beds that are rectangular shaped, circle shaped. They have planters. There are garden fences, pools, bird baths, benches, you name it. And you can just pretty much design your garden. So I'm going to kind of show you, after I played around with it for a while, what I ended up with. This is what my garden, I'm hoping to have it look like this year. So then I could go in and take each bed and fill it with different vegetables that I hope to plant. I can go over here and I can plan how many, I want per row and just input that information, and all of my veggies are in the correct space. So there's all these vegetables. There's also different fruit options. I put my blackberries in there that are in my garden. They also have flowers, fruit trees, all sorts of things like that, anything that you can imagine. And then up here is a garden calendar. So anything that I put into my garden gets placed down here on a calendar, and it shows me when I need to sow those seeds, when I'll get a harvest, all sorts of things like that. So just a really handy tool that kind of compiles all the information that I need for the garden that I plan on planting this year.
So as you can see with Hortisketch, I was able to plot out my existing garden space from 2022 and then just plug in my beds and kind of move them around, the new beds, until I found out how I would like them. And I was also, in doing that, able to then calculate how many extra beds I needed to purchase to fill the space. And it's wonderful now. I have my whole garden planning calendar all done for me on Hortisketch. I don't have to do that research myself. In previous years, I would have to look at the seed packets of every item that I purchased and kind of count back on the calendar how many weeks before the last frost they needed to be planted. And I would make this big calendar for myself. But this year, it was all done for me on Hortisketch, which is wonderful. So I can just follow that planting guide through the year. When you're plotting out all of your items into your garden, something that you do need to remember is to consider companion planting. I've created a little list for myself in my garden notebook, and it shows all of the items that I like to plant, and I have a column for things that I should plant next to it that will help that item grow, and then I have a column of things that I shouldn't plant next to it because they are not beneficial, and they could not be beneficial either because they pull too much from the soil, or maybe they attract pests that could harm the other companion plant, just things like that. And this is just something I've compiled over the years in different books and websites that I've gone to. I will link a good companion planting guide in the description of this video for you. That's something you always want to consider when you're laying out your garden plan. So now that my garden is all planned and laid out, I moved on to the next step, which was to assess my seeds. I have in my garden plan what I want to plant, and so now I needed to go through my seeds that I have in storage and just figure out what I'm not going to have enough of or what I maybe need to order that we used up all of last year. And I was able to go through and I placed a couple of those orders, and I have all the seeds I need now except for peas. I'm still waiting on my pea seeds. And so that was my second step of garden planning. Okay, so the next step is I'm ready to plant my seeds. And before I did so, I used another wonderful feature that Garden Savvy offers in the price of that package that I mentioned, and that is the Garden Manager option. And so what I did is I inputted all of the seeds that I plan to plant into this Garden Manager application, and I'm going to go ahead and explain that to you now.
Here is the main page at Garden Savvy. There's Hortisketch on the side. There's my Garden Manager, and we're going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to pull up options for my inventory of seeds, the suppliers, different pests and diseases information, just growing guides, all sorts of information. There's places for notes. And what I have done is I have listed all of the different categories of seeds that I have in my storage. Each one of those different categories kind of got their own folder. And today I'll show you my folder for peppers, since that's what we're going to be planting later on in this video. So if I scroll down on that, I inputted all of the types of peppers that I plan on planting this year. You can see the name of the pepper over here, and they're all listed in alphabetical order for me. Here is the supplier, and once you start typing it in, it just links it for you, and because they have a database of common suppliers. An area for different notes, so I put planting notes from last year on how those did. There's an option to upload pictures. I have pictures of the seed packets, or you could do pictures of the plants as they mature. And then there is also a column over here. I can check this if I need to order more seeds. So I can have this out in the garden with me. There is a mobile version of this so that if I run out of seeds, I can just click this so I remember that I need to purchase. And if I go back here and actually click on the supplier for the seeds, it can take me directly to that website, so that when I want to order those seeds, I don't have to go search for it. It's just automatically there. All of the information that I need is in one location, just super convenient.
Okay, so now that I have all of the information there, I'm going to go ahead and start planting my seeds. So this is just so wonderful. Everything feels very organized. I have the garden plan all laid out. I have all my seeds cataloged in my garden manager, and now I'm going to go ahead and start some seeds. So this week the kids and I decided to do pepper seeds, and why don't I go ahead and show you that process. Okay, so today is the day that we are going to start our pepper seeds. It's always very exciting. Peppers and tomatoes are the two things that I start indoors and I grow under grow lights. Some years, if I'm starting celery or onions or asparagus from seed, I will also do those indoors under grow lights. And then if I have any other room on my shelves, I might start some fun flowers or herbs or things indoors, but otherwise, on most years, peppers and tomatoes are pretty much the only thing that I like to start indoors. The rest of my things that I start from seed will either be in jugs outside, winter sown, or they will be sown directly into the ground once we get past our last frost date, or for some cold hardy items, I might be able to get them in the ground before the last frost date. So today we're going to do peppers. Peppers are the first thing that I start. We are here in Ohio, and in our zone, we don't have an extremely long growing season. Our last frost date is typically the middle of May, and then our first frost date in the fall is typically in the middle of October. And so because of the length of that growing season, we need to start our pepper plants usually around the middle of February. I typically start them the second week of February, but things are just a little crazy and hectic this year with having a baby. We're a little behind schedule, so we're starting it here about a week or so later than I normally do. Some pepper varieties, like last year, I grew these Tabasco peppers, and even starting these, I think I started them on February 8th last year, and we had a late first frost. It was toward the end of October before it frosted, and I still had peppers that had not, fully matured. The plant was just full of peppers that unfortunately never ripened to maturity. So that's the thing about peppers. And you could still harvest them when they're green. They're just not going to reach their full potential. So starting them early is important here. So let me show you the varieties that I have settled on for starting this year. So this has become my favorite bell pepper variety. Last year was the first year I planted these, and I was so happy with the results. These are yellow monster peppers from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, and they were amazing. They literally produced peppers that were, this long, and I liked to harvest them when they were green. I never really let them get to maturity when they were yellow because they were so prolific, and I just used them as, green peppers. But they were great, and so I'm hoping I have the same results this year, and I will probably be sowing the majority of my bell pepper seeds as these. And because I like a little bit of diversity, I'll be doing California Wonder, just your standard bell pepper. You can either harvest it while it's green, or you can let it sweeten and get a little color on it. So those are my only two bell pepper varieties that we'll be planting, and this is going to be the majority of our peppers. I decided throughout the pantry challenge this year that we do not need as many hot peppers as we have been growing in the past. It's just not necessary. Adam, I've tried several different hot sauces that I've made over the years, and he just does not like my homemade hot sauces as much as he prefers store-bought Tabasco sauce. So I'm going to experiment again this year. I'm still going to try it. I've tried it so many different ways. Fermented, I've tried it not fermented. We've just done different kinds of peppers and combinations of peppers, and one day maybe I will find the perfect hot sauce that he will like better than Tabasco sauce. But in the meantime, it doesn't make sense for me to allocate precious garden space to tons of hot pepper varieties. So all I'm going to do is grow maybe one or two jalapeno. These are Tam jalapenos. And mostly I just have a few kids that like candied jalapenos on their pizzas and things. So that is primarily what I am growing these for. And then I also have a few canning recipes that I use jalapeno in, but otherwise we do not need a ton of jalapenos. We don't make things like jalapeno poppers and things as meals. So one, maybe two plants of this is what I'm going to do. This I did not have. This is Sugar Rush peach peppers. I bought the seeds last year and started several plants, and I just unfortunately did not have good results with these. I'm going to give it one more try this year, and if it doesn't work out for me, we are going to get rid of these and never try them again. But they just sound really good. It says they're smoky, kind of have a sweet tropical flavor. And so I'm just going to try one or two more plants of these and see if I can get a decent harvest this year. And like I said, no more than one or two of those varieties. This was a free pepper seed that I got from Baker Creek. It's, I don't know how to pronounce it, datil peppers. And because they were free and I have them, I'm just going to try one of them and see how they grow here. And it's just an experiment. We'll see how that goes. Then, like I said, I tried Tabascos last year. I had 3 Tabasco plants last year, and they produced a lot of peppers. But as I mentioned, they didn't really have time to fully mature. And that may be part of why Adam didn't prefer my homemade Tabasco sauce, because the flavor of the peppers was probably different because they had to be picked early on the plant. So we're going to try it one more time. I'm just going to do probably one plant of this, and solely for the purpose of making hot sauce. And then if I figure it out this year and have a recipe that he really likes, then I'll know in the future that I will grow more of these. So we'll see how that goes. And then these two are my hot peppers that I sort of grow more of than other types. Banana peppers, because they're milder, they're kind of sweet and they're not truly spicy and hot. My children really like these as pizza toppings and taco toppings, things like that. I pickle these in abundance and like to have them on the shelf to have throughout winter. So we will probably do the majority of our hot peppers will be banana peppers. I'm thinking, I don't know, probably 5 plants, and that should be enough for us, especially if we have a good pepper year, pepper harvest. And then, of course, cayennes. Um, Typically, in the past, I've done maybe 5 or 6 plants of these in the garden, and we have so much cayenne in the house right now. I'm not even sure I need to grow them because we've got freeze-dried cayennes. I've got some dehydrated. We have tons of cayenne powder, things like that. But I'm probably going to do 1 or 2 just so we have some fresh, because there are some canning recipes that I like to throw a couple cayenne peppers into, and I'd like to have them fresh for that purpose. So maybe just 1 plant of that. And those are our pepper selections. So let me show you with seed starting the equipment that I'm going to use here. So I have these washed out. I got these trays. They're from Burpee brand, and I got them from Tractor Supply last year. You can see that they have a silicone bottom that kind of pops up. They worked wonderfully for me last year, and because they're so well made, I'm going to be able to get many years of gardening use out of these. So I highly recommend them. A little pricier than some other options, but as I mentioned, you will get your money's worth over the years. I like them too because on the top they have a grid that is sort of labeled. You can see A, B, C, and D. And then over here they have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can kind of make a little chart and label your grid on a piece of paper, so it's a little easier to not get messed up on what you've planted, and you don't have to use little tags or whatever in there with them. You can just use a piece of paper and a pencil. So I start my seeds in something like this that is smaller. A common question I get is, why don't I, because eventually the plant is going to outgrow this space and need to be transplanted into a larger cup. And I typically go from this to like a red solo cup. I have tons of them that I repurpose every year and reuse them. And then if I go to family gatherings where people are throwing away solo cups, I will save those from the trash and bring them home and wash them out, cut a couple holes in the bottom, and then use those to plant seedlings in. But the reason why I don't just plant them directly into the solo cups, there are a few reasons for that. First of all, pepper plants in particular need a lot of heat to germinate. They are very slow to germinate. Your house needs to be rather warm. And so the only place that I get good germination rates with my peppers is right by my wood stove. And this year I am going to be setting up my grow lights not by my wood stove. So that presents a problem. So the great thing about starting my seeds in something small like this is that I can put them over by the wood stove until they germinate and then move them under my grow lights when they need light. If I had all of my pepper plants in 50 little red solo cups, that would be very inconvenient to find the space around my wood stove to keep all of those. So that's one reason I plant in these. Another reason is because once they germinate, they can stay in this little tray for quite a while. Until the plants maybe get about this tall, I will keep them in these little trays. And once they germinate, they begin to need light. And so if I just have these 2 little things planted with peppers, I can keep them under 1 grow light for the 2 to 3 weeks until they get about this big. If I had all of these planted in individual solo cups, it might take up enough space that I would need to have 2 grow lights on for that 2 to 3 week period. So this saves me on electricity costs by only having to use 1 grow light until the stage when they need transplanted. So while yes, it does present a little extra work because I will have to take a day when they outgrow these seed starting trays to move them to something bigger, that amount of effort is worth it for the cost savings and the electricity savings and only having to run 1 grow light. So that's why I do that. You don't have to buy something fancy like this to start your seeds in. You could, if you have the space, or you have something like a heat mat, or your house is warm enough, you could just plant them directly into whatever little pots you're gonna grow them in. Some people have great results using things like egg cartons. I've done that in the past, and I have had mold issues when I use them. I think that sometimes the egg cartons and even the little cardboard type seed starting trays that they sell in the store that you can use, they hold so much moisture in them that I find that my tops of my soil tend to get a little more mold issues than when I use something plastic like this. But some people have great results with those, so they are an option. You can use anything like that. There are lots of options out on the market. Some people prefer to just use soil blocks, and so they'll get all of their seed starting mix or their potting mix that they're going to use, and they buy a little soil block maker, and they make little blocks of soil that they put their seed in, and then there's no container necessary. As it grows, they can just take that little soil block, move it into a pot, or plant it directly into the garden. And that works great for them. And if I were planting in a greenhouse outside, that's probably the option that I would choose. But because it's indoors, that's a little messier of an option to not have the soil contained in something and to just have it loose in a block. I just prefer to use something like this inside my house, especially when I'm having small children help me plant. So that's important to me.
You have a
All
couple
right,
different options
let's go
for
get
the
started.
soil type that you can use to start your seeds. Some people prefer to use a specific seed starting soil. There are also just regular potting soil mixes. I have used both of those options on different years and have pretty much had the same result. So there's not one that I prefer over the other. I am also not brand loyal. I just go to the store and I find whichever brand of potting soil or seed starting mix is cheapest. I do try to find organic options and just buy whatever I need. You can also make your own seed starting mix, but that just isn't something that I have taken the time to do. Our local garden stores and farm stores typically have really good deals on potting mixes and things in the spring. And so I just buy from the store what I need because I'm not starting a ton of seeds. If I were doing a whole greenhouse full of seeds, I might try to make my own soil just to make it more economical. And we're just putting our seeds in the soil. When I start my seeds, I try to do 2 seeds per hole. And this is just in case there's poor germination rates because some of my seeds are left over from previous years and germination rates decrease through time the longer you store your seeds. So putting 2 ensures that we will get some germination. And then if 2 seeds sprout in the same hole, when we go to transplant these to their new containers, we will just have double the plants, which will be wonderful. And then once they're all planted, we just give them a thorough watering. Want to get that soil nice and wet. Some people prefer to wet the soil before they plant. I prefer to wet it after we get the seeds in there. And I use a spray bottle to do this. And then we just cover it to kind of trap the heat until they germinate. These will go behind the wood stove.
So it feels really good to have some plants started in the house. It'll be a couple more weeks before we see a lot of germination and we have greenery growing and all of that. But it always brings me so much joy through the rainy and kind of dreary gray season here in Ohio to at least have some plant life, new plant life growing indoors. And that's just really exciting. Of course, we have our winter sown jugs that are outdoors, and I've done videos on that seed starting process. I'm going to link one in the description below. But as I mentioned, any seeds that I'm not starting indoors are put into jugs, and the little jugs act like greenhouses, and those are growing outdoors. And we'll be doing more winter sowing here in the next couple weeks. I have all my friends and family, they're saving their little plastic jugs and plastic salad containers and things like that for me. And I'm going to go and grab all of those and we will get planting in them. The final step in, I guess, my garden planning process this year also involves Garden Savvy and what their website offers. They have a wonderful community. And so what I've done is I've created a Three Rivers
We are back
Homestead
on that main
group on
page
their
here
community
with the
tab.
garden
Let
manager
me
and
show you that.
Hortisketch. I'm going to click on the community button here and it's going to bring up the area where all of the other users in this community are posting information about their gardens. They do introductory posts, people help answer questions. And then if you go up here's where you'd post, go over to the side here and click on my groups. I have created a group called Three Rivers Homestead. And this is where I hope that any of you who watch my videos that want to be part of this community, that you'll join this group and we can post questions here and kind of have an area to communicate about garden specific information and kind of troubleshoot with one another and share our successes and our failures. And I'm going to be on here quite a bit, hopefully gleaning some information from you guys. So I'm posting my first question here on this particular day about a new pepper variety that I showed you that I got from Baker Creek this year that I've never grown before. And I'm hoping that if I put this question out there, someone can give me some advice. So I'm really excited to use this tool this year.
So between what I have here in my planner and what I have in what Garden Savvy offers through HortiSketch in their garden manager and on the community tab there, I'm just very excited for this garden season. I'm feeling very prepared. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the description. I'll try to help you out. I hope you will consider joining me on Garden Savvy. Use my coupon code that I have right here, and we can help each other through this growing season. But it's just so exciting, you guys. Spring is almost here. Gracie found a crocus in the yard yesterday, which is so exciting. I believe on Thursday of this week it's supposed to be 61 degrees, which is amazing. And then it's going to drop below freezing to like 29 that night. But looking at the forecast ahead, we're heading into normal spring weather here, and I just can't wait to get out in the dirt. One thing I will do, I will not be going out and disturbing my garden beds and really getting them prepped until after it warms up for a while, because there are tons of pollinators asleep out there in my garden. I left it quite a mess last year because I was pregnant and due to have a baby, and I just didn't have the energy to go out and do a lot of cleaning, which is actually a good thing for the ecosystem. Leaving all of those plants kind of lying here, not only are they dying and breaking down and adding nutrition to the soil over the winter, but they're also creating lots of wonderful homes for the pollinators. There are bees that overwinter in that. Caterpillars, moths and butterflies will make their little cocoons in there, and they will emerge this spring and help to pollinate the garden. There's also things like praying mantis egg cases. Those are beneficial insects to my garden that I want eating the bad things like the aphids and stuff. And so I just don't want to disturb any of that. So we will definitely leave that. And then sometime probably in early April, the boys and I will go out there and we will get started building the rest of our garden beds, get them filled with soil, and we can start doing our spring planting with our cold hardy crops. So just so exciting, you guys. And I will take you along on all of this and share what we're doing every week in my weekly video. So, all right, friends, I hope your garden planting is going well. Make sure you check out Garden Savvy if you'd like to have a really nice digital way to kind of organize all of your garden plans and seeds and things like that. All right, we'll see you later, friends. Bye.